let me do a quick introduction of our speakers here. Next slide, please. So we have 6 portfolio reviewers tonight, and again, I'm so grateful to everybody who, when we put out the call for speakers, or for reviewers, I'm so grateful to everybody who responded. Matthew Johnson, Nikki Kerber, Kat Martineau, Thomas Oder, Jeffrey Ryan Pass, Boris Savitskiy. Thank you very much. We've got the bios up here. In the interest of time, I won't read them word for word, but please, take a moment to read up on their backgrounds, and again, thank you so much for volunteering your time tonight to help UXPA DC members. So with that, let's go ahead and move into the panel discussion portion of the evening. And for that, I'm gonna hand off to one of my fellow organizers, Lauren, who will be moderating the panel discussion.
Thank you, Jordan. And thank you to the awesome panelists that are with us tonight. I just want to say, as a current career transitioner myself, I know all too well that the portfolio design process, case studies specifically, can introduce a lot of questions, which can be hard to understand from that hiring manager's perspective. So on a high level, I think that our burning question for tonight is really what makes a good portfolio. So with that, I'd love to hand it off to the panelists. Whoever would like to start. Boris, you're right next to me on the screen here.
Sure. So I think a lot of times it will vary based on the role you're looking for. If you're looking for a researcher role, a design role, or a hybrid of both, so there'll be various things. But case studies in both cases are really important. And for me, I always hire hybrid designers, like they can do both things. And for me, what I really look for is those kind of things that are important to me, like stylistic stuff. We're very visual people, so a lot of times what I'll notice is like probably the visual aspect, like, oh, what a project that would be of interest, like, oh, this looks really good, so let me learn more about it. And one of the things I always recommend, so you think about your users, so you're hiring, so the hiring managers, they're your users actually. And so how do those people review your designs or review your portfolio? So for example, like hiring managers tend to be very busy. They're doing a lot of things. And so like what I always recommend is putting up kind of the end of your project at first, and then kind of how you arrive at it, so to speak.
Oh. Sorry, I think I lost audio. Can you hear me? You all can hear me. Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I think Boris is the one that lost audio.
Might have been Boris. Okay. Boris, can you do an audio check? Okay, we can go ahead and move on. Who'd like to go next?
I'm back. Sorry.
Oh,
sorry about that.
That's okay. Excellent. Was there more you wanted to add?
I think, it's all about including the most important stuff.
Yeah.
Like the personas, including really like relevant information that the managers will find interesting. Like I look for that stuff, like journey maps, various, like it's those things that capture me and then will make me want to read your case study, because just receiving a portfolio and reading case study, I'm probably not going to do that unless something in it catches my eyes of interest.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I'll add on that. Before I got into UX, I worked as a recruiter in the creative space. And what I can say is the first impression matters, your homepage matters a lot. And if it's difficult to assess what you do within 5 seconds, it's going to be tricky to continue moving on, because there's typically a lot to review. And That can also be tricky too if you're a multidisciplinary and labeling yourself. So, you know, in my portfolio process, I talked to a lot of people. I showed my portfolio to a lot of people and got a lot of feedback. And it made me better at labeling myself. And it's always a process to do that when, you know, you don't identify necessarily as a designer first or a strategist first. You sort of have a hybrid approach to your work. So labeling yourself off the bat is very quickly, be it visually or through text.
Okay, and when you say label, it's just sort of like that subheading of, you know, UX UI designer or interaction designer.
Yeah, and if I see that label and I'm not catching that with your content right off the bat, it's moving on beyond that is I'm going to be, you know, less enthusiastic about moving on to the next stage and reviewing your portfolio. Still do, because sometimes you have to go beyond that to find really good work. But if that's not there from the get-go, it's you know, the next click better be very strong.
Got it. Thank you.
I would just add on to what both Boris and Kat had said, agreeing with all of it. There are a lot of weird things, especially for folks in this geographic region. There's a lot of folks who can't share their work because of NDAs or other considerations.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to be very, very creative about what your portfolio is or isn't in that case. Also, given that many of the companies in this area have large numbers of government or federal or other similar or related clients, one of the things I always look for is at least a sensitivity to government standards, 508, accessibility, all of these things. If you want to show your really best, most design-oriented work, you may not be showing something that's super compliant. You want to make sure that you have something that offsets that. For folks like myself, who the first thing I'm going to look at is, can this person actually design within a box for our clients who have lots and lots and lots of boxes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially for this area.
I'll add on to something that Boris had mentioned earlier, Lauren, which is, you know, around the, does the case study make sense in terms of, is it telling a story? I am a huge storyteller. The folks that know me know that I, you know, I'm very, you know, use my hands and, you know, just sort of like that touchy-feely sort of person. And I love to get into a really good story. And it's okay if a portfolio doesn't specifically give out all the nuts and details of your process, but I want to understand, to Boris's point, you know, what's the bottom line up front? So show me that right at the top of the page, or somewhere near the top of the page, and then go into sort of the process that you took, why it was important, your specific role on that project. If you worked with any other folks and maybe what their roles were. Was it a cross-functional team? Were there other stakeholders involved? What level are they? You know, kind of give me a nice story to give me a good sense in just a couple of seconds, or maybe in a minute or so, a snapshot of what you did, why it was important, and the accomplishments or the successes, maybe even some of the lessons learned to that story that you can share. I think that's really important. And I think, to Kat, you had mentioned as well, you know, we don't have a whole lot of time to look at portfolios. I look through portfolios really, really quickly. I need to make sure that, you know, from UX standards perspective, that the information architecture, it makes sense, that things are very clearly labeled, that I know, one, where your resume is located. Can I download it very easily if I haven't been given a copy, maybe by HR or the recruitment team? Can I find it? And then two, where are all of your case studies? Again, it doesn't have to be a fancy, flashy site, but it should be easy to use, easy to navigate, and easy to read and understand.
Okay, so you're not looking for every single deliverable that went into the design process, just the ones that tell the story.
Yep.
Support the storytelling.
Exactly. And I think to that point too, Lauren, you don't have to have fully fleshed out personas or journey maps. And I think that also gets to what Jeff was alluding to, especially now, or especially within this region of federal contracting and all of the federal jobs. Even if it's sketches or things that sort of allude to the process, that's fine too. Again, I just want to sort of understand your process and how you went about doing things.
Excellent.
So, oh, sorry. So one thing that comes to mind with this discussion, because I know it was something that I struggled with a lot when I was just looking for jobs for the first time in UX, and it's making me think of that, is there's kind of an inherent contradiction in saying, okay, we want to see evidence of your process, we want to see a case study. I would even add to that, we want to see the evidence that you can navigate constraints, that you can be told, actually, we don't have time for that, and you have a way to overcome it, for example, or the person you need to talk to, or the group of people you need to talk to, to create that particular artifact or persona, they're not available. And how did you navigate that? And that can be a trick when you're like just starting out and maybe you don't have too many opportunities to do real projects. So you're just kind of cherry picking things, and maybe it's all visual, but you don't really do a lot of research and things like that. But I think it's such a difficult thing, because you're telling, we tend to tell folks when we're reviewing portfolios, like, yeah, like it's true, we're not going to look at every detail, we're not going to we're just probably going to scan it, but yet we want to see evidence of good thinking, we want to see evidence that you navigated constraints and case studies. So it's kind of a contradiction there, and I've just been thinking about it in my head that I've seen portfolios, I would say more recently, from trying to help just people get jobs, and we haven't been hiring recently, that do this well. It's hard to explain how they do it well. I mean, I guess something about the visual hierarchy that works, but it's a very, very difficult thing to advise someone on how to do, I would say, especially you're expecting also a designer to not only have great visual skills, but writing skills. And so it's a lot. Just wanted to put that out there.
I would just add to that, the writing is so important. If you're just doing keyword soup, I mean, it's hard because like there are 50 different ways you can refer to, interaction design that are all accurate depending on what part of interaction design you're doing. So if you're just like word souping and trying to get all those keywords in there so that, an automatic HR scanning tool pulls your resume up to the top, remember that a human being's going to be reading it later. And it would be better to have a really clear value statement about what you do and how you do a good job at a certain discipline, foregoing all of the synonyms for that discipline, than to have a bunch of keyword soup that you have to muddle through to try to get the narrative, which is really hard. I mean, my resume is like keywords. It's just, it's ridiculous. It's stupefying because it's made for machines to read it. It's not made for people to read it. But just be aware of that, especially in like materials like this, as opposed to a resume, where people are really looking to get to know you, as opposed to ticking off boxes, HTML, CSS, whatever. I think it's really important.
I've read that in some job postings that they caution against the use of buzzwords. I think that it brings up a bad flavor, I think, in some cases. And I'm curious if the buzzword thing, Jeffrey, is you're obviously very experienced, if it's appropriate for more experienced people to use those buzzwords, as opposed to somebody that's more junior, mid-level, who actually may have heard them on podcasts or read about them in a Medium article, to put those in their resume or portfolio when they don't actually have that experience.
That's such a good question. I want to hear what everyone else has to say, but I just want to throw this out here because I'll be the first person to throw myself and everyone like me under the bus. Mid and senior level folks, especially, let's just say those that are pale of complexion, bald, wearing glasses, a little chubby, the prototypical UXer, IA, like lawyers and like politicians and everyone else, we use all of the jargon to make us seem more intelligent and better at our jobs and all of this. And nobody should be doing that if they can help it. Everybody sees through that. If you're just trying to get all of the words out that you think people want to hear, it's really hard to come up with a story that's compelling, that really tells who you are and how you came to be who you are and the skills that you have. And I think that events like this, but especially working with your colleagues on like fine tuning your elevator pitch, practicing it, it really, really helps. Because even having a great document, if you can't get in and then articulate it in a room, and I know it's hard, like some of us are going to be IAs or content strategists on this call, right? And very likely introverts. I mean, if we're just generalizing. And those folks may have to work more on their presentation game than they do on their portfolio game. As where someone who's super, super visual, you know, it might be the opposite way around. So definitely engage your colleagues, mentors, this group here and the larger UXPA DC group, which is super friendly, and hone in on those things, because I think it'll help you a lot once you get your foot in the door.
So vocabulary, fancy words. This is an interesting one. In my previous jobs, actually where Jeff works, we used to call that consulting speak, as in you say a lot of stuff but actually mean nothing, which is like a stereotype. What consultants do, we do nothing but we get paid for it, which is not true, obviously. But so I talk too much. I probably use too many words, but I'm also English second language. And so I tend to use a little bit more simpler language because of that. And I think in the end, there is not a right answer to this. It is all about balance. If you say a whole lot of words that you actually don't know how to use, and then you get asked a question based on the words and you don't know the answer, it's been so many times where I've actually caught candidates with that. I asked them a question about a topic that was like a subject was listed, and the answer they gave me was just completely wrong. And I was like, and that's after that, it's like the whole interview is pretty much ruined. Like, I already know, like, what else you don't know. And so I think you really only should put the words and the content you have used and truly understand it, because it's okay if you don't use fancy words. I don't use fancy words. All the things, like all the various things we do in the UX field, you might not end up doing at your job. Like you might not be creating, well, I hope personas are still created, but you might not create personas in like where there's demographic information. Like, so not every aspect will be the same from job to job or from team to team even, or project to project. It can so vary. So to me, it's just use whatever language you're comfortable with. And if you're not using fancy language, it's okay. Because guess what? Hiring managers don't always use it. So, and I also want to mention is a lot of times who's actually reading your resume might not even be a UX person. It might be a recruiter who have no idea who they're hiring for. It might be a director of engineering who never hired a UX person before. That wasn't my case. I was hired by director of engineering. And sorry, and a lot like startups and any small company, you might be the first UX person there. So use the language that, again, it's all designing your portfolio, your resume for your audience. Like treat us as your customers. Like treat us, how do you want us to interact with your portfolio and your resume? And it's okay not to use lots of fancy language.
Yeah, I just want to add, because that's a fantastic point, but not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but yeah, just the person, even if they are a UX person, they're reading your portfolio or resume, that doesn't mean they're going to use the same language. I mean, we have a very hard time in this field maintaining, I would say, simple, consistent language. There's always a new, especially with job descriptions, are the worst. And yeah, and if you ever do research, like with people that aren't super informed, or even if you're on a project team, I know recently, I don't think everybody understood what the word information architecture meant. And I think it wasted a lot of time because no one sort of stepped in and said, well, I'm not really sure what you mean, because it can be a very vague term that can mean, you know, depending on who's there, I mean, even when used correctly, it can mean a lot of different things that are related. So I think, yeah, just maybe the smartest person in the room is actually the one who can communicate the clearest to all stakeholders and help move things forward, not the one who knows all the terms. And so I think, yeah, and I think that's just a great point that I wanted to emphasize.
Okay, we've got a few questions here from the audience. A question from Teresa. As a hiring manager, is a portfolio website always preferred over a PDF or deck?
I'll chime in on that one. If you can build a website, it's definitely preferable and helps in terms of being able to review quickly. And but that's, you know, and if you're scared of your website skills or the technical skills to build a website, I know some researchers where their focus is on research, and they you know, doing the visual design side of things is not what excites them or makes them feel passionate about the field. So, you know, it's okay to use a template. It's okay to start experimenting that way, and, you know, not put the pressure on yourself to have the most original visual design. Really kind of focusing on content organization on a website is helpful. Of course, there are NDAs, and with NDAs, you know, and you know, when I worked as a recruiter, and even now I advise, you know, you can put in a PDF what is comfortable for you and what is within your NDA. You know, some elements of a project. I haven't worked in government services as much, so but I've known people who have, and showing a PDF, even if you can't show the direct visual, just having a PDF that kind of walks through your process and talks about how you solved a problem in somewhat vague terms, can be a really good way of communicating and conveying your contributions. In those cases, you do have to rely on your verbal skills a lot more when you are presenting a deck or presenting a PDF. So that's just something else to think about. It is preferable, in my opinion, to have a website, but a deck or a PDF can also be powerful if you've rehearsed and practiced and know what you're speaking to within the PDF or deck.
Awesome.
I would just add, I totally agree with Kat. I would just add, if you set up a website and you're going to put in a lot of references to you having hardcore coding skills, expect us to look at your code.
Yes, definitely.
If you are not a coder and you don't put that in there, we're not going to go poking around in your code. But if you say you're like a CISO security person and you're on a WordPress site, we're going to make sure you've locked down access to your site. I mean, if you tell us that you're something and your website gives us a way to test that, we probably will. About the only thing we can test on a PDF is if you claim to be an accessibility professional, I really hope that your PDF is tagged correctly and has a proper flow, because I'm going to test it. So just be aware that what I think both are fine, and some like PDFs, if you are doing cleared, classified government work, a PDF is pretty much going to be what you're going to have to use. Totally fine. They're both fine, but they both have things that we're going to poke and prod at. So be aware of that.
You know, the other alternative, this has recently come up. I didn't think about it until I've seen candidates, is another one. Figma. I've had candidates include links to their Figma, and oh my goodness, was that fun for me. But because I get to see how they build stuff, it was really fascinating. But of course, guess what I look, like Jeff said, I'm gonna look, have you named all your layers and is your file well organized? Because guess what? It matters to me. But that was just, it was fun, like to go and dive into it. Or if it's Adobe XD, I think it has a similar one. And like I recently recommended to a friend of mine who just joined the UX field. It's like, yeah, you have Figma files, add that in. Like it's, you won't lose anything by doing it, but you gain it for the managers who will find that very interesting.
Awesome tips, guys. A few more questions from the audience. From Emily here. Any tips for striking a good balance between providing enough context and detail, but keeping case studies concise, given that hiring managers are only looking at a portfolio for a few minutes?
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll
Go
try
ahead.
my hand at this one. Sorry, Boris. Do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll give my college A try, and then I'll give the mic over to you. I promise. I mean, yeah, this is a hard one, right? And I think, Matt, you even alluded to it. It's like a catch-22 in many regards, right? So I think for me, and going back to what Jeff you had mentioned, you know, having very clear writing, but you don't need to have paragraphs and paragraphs of, you know, everything that you've done or every process or step that you've done. Having concise short sentences that are in plain English, again, to the acronym soup consultant speak topic, you know, short sentences in plain English, short paragraphs that sort of get to the overarching topic or theme that you're trying to convey, I think is really important. And then, you know, if you can kind of sprinkle in some visuals or sketches, or maybe some animations of a mural board activity that maybe you have facilitated, you know, just something to get us excited, or something to want to talk to you and engage and learn more about you, I think is really important. So go ahead, Boris.
So I think Nikki said everything. Is right. Yeah, just like really short, very easy to read. If you do add sentences, one of the things I recommend is bold the important content. Again, so what I'm likely to do is I'm going to notice it's all about grabbing my eye. It's not minutes, it's seconds that I've spent on your portfolio site. And so grabbing my eye and just bullet that. Was there like a return, some sort of like way you were able to do an impact? Like, again, show the end and the benefits of your project first, and then show me the journey you got there. So the start of your portfolio case study can be really small because it's all about the results. And then you have a whole lot of data underneath, and just kind of like very easy bullet points. Also, don't make too many sentences. Again, people just don't read. We don't have a lot of time. So it makes it easier for us to consume your case studies.
Great, thank you. I have another question here from Mukesh. How should a junior/entry level UX designer get an opportunity without having 3 to 5 plus years of work experience?
So, and this is in almost any industry, volunteering will get you a really long way. There's a lot of organizations in DC, World IA Day, World Usability Day, many of which are associated with UXPA. There are many organizations that are nonprofits that don't have the ability to hire a web team or designers. If you can find a way through volunteerism or through anything else to start building up those capabilities and those examples, that can open a door where you don't have the 3 to 5 years of experience that you can demonstrate, or specific a degree or something else that you can demonstrate. Of course, that means you have to really hustle, because that might be additional work above and beyond what you're doing in school or whatever 9 to 5 grind you currently have. But experience doesn't have to mean paid work at a company where they hired you for a job where the title maps to the thing you're applying for. There's lots of people, and Jordan's call to arms earlier. I think it was Jordan. Maybe it was Asha, but there's always a need for volunteers to help these organizations. And there's so much in this area, rich opportunities, Good Gov UX, UX Camp. There's a whole bunch of others. I won't even do a list because I'll leave people off and feel bad. But there's lots of opportunities if you're willing to hustle them.
Excellent. Would
And
anyone
you'll be
else like
great,
to...
and your help will be gratefully accepted, as long as you honestly, say what you can do and then do that. Don't say you can come in and redesign, a nonprofit's website for free and then leave them with a bunch of designs that they need to slice and optimize because you don't know how to write code or something.
I'll do like a very quick one, because I think it's like the bad part of our industry. Obviously, as Jeff said, it's a lot of industries have this problem. I see a lot of it in UX, and I myself encountered that because I'm hiring 3 to 5 years experienced people, and they have to turn away more junior people. And I think what I would say is, in those cases where you don't have a lot of portfolio pieces, you don't have a lot of experience, make what you have extremely polished. Make it look so good that when I see your portfolio, I will forget about the years of experience. Trust me, in the past, I've actually done that where I had a junior person come in interview and I was just like, wow, I convinced my management to hire her. And now one of my highest producers on my team. So like, yes, you will hear a lot of no's because you're junior. But just make it look so polished that it looks like you have those years of experience.
Definitely agree with that, Boris. And I also will add to that and say, if you already have experience in another field, make it very clear what UX contributions you made on that job. You never know if a UX role is going to be really focused on something more quantitative, for example. So if you have that experience and can show that, even if it was only 10% of what you did at your last job, being able to communicate that can really open some doors. And even if you didn't have the right title or were housed in the right department, if you can show that if you've been on a UX team of 1, for example, and if you can demonstrate your output and do it in a visually compelling way, it is a way to position yourself if you don't have that 3 to 5 years of experience. And a lot of junior jobs too typically do have that 3 to 5 year mark. So which kind of in my mind makes them more mid-level than junior, but you're going to run into that in companies where junior positions have that 3 to 5 years of experience. So look at that and go, okay, what in my past, if you do have career experience and are not right out of undergrad, do look at your past experience and make those connections and be ready to speak to them confidently and practice.
2 thumbs up for what Kat just said. This is yes.
All right. I wonder if we have time for one more question. Let's see. Question from Morrow. Great insights, guys. I'd like to get your thoughts on how many interviews is too much, but more importantly, I'd like to know if Boris will be breaking out that stormtrooper helmet he has charging in the background. There it is.
Well, we may have audio issues with Boris again if he puts that on. But I will just say really quickly, the answer to that question is it depends on the culture of the company you're interviewing with. There are companies where you, or maybe not even companies, maybe projects where you will interview with everyone on the project team because it's all about team and fit. And you will be like, what the heck is going on? Why am I interviewing so many times? And other times you will meet with one person and it's done, one and done. It's a hiring manager and that's it. It kind of depends on the culture of the organization you're interviewing at. So if you can find out about that culture, even if it's just like connecting with people from that company on LinkedIn or following their blog or whatever, because that might give you some insights as to what the hiring and interviewing process is like. And also bigger companies will do like events where it's like a cattle call, and that's not normal interviewing. You just have to go in and work your way through that and hope that your name sits in someone's ear so that they call you back later and you get to meet with people that are actually specialists in your field or direct hiring managers, as opposed to HR generalists or someone who's just trying to collect resumes and, feed the stable.
I'll follow up on that one. I have been as many as 9 interviews deep and had one for a major job that I got, right? So I think it's always fair up front when you have that screener phone call to ask, what is the process? What is the interview process? If I were to go all the way to the end, what's going to happen in each step, right? Hopefully your recruiter knows that or can get you that information. That will help you prepare for how long you got to go. You won't be surprised that oh, you're going to have an interview tomorrow. We need you to present X that you weren't prepared for. So I know, especially a lot of us that are younger feel uncomfortable asking some of those upfront questions, but it will save you time and it will help you be so much more prepared just to ask it front. Because at the end of the day, you can't really control what they ask from you. Your job is to show up and present well. So what you can do is ask.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, panelists, for this great discussion. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jordan or Asha to set up our breakout rooms if they are ready.
Hi, this is Sasha. You can't see my face because I am the logo. I am the organization. Yeah, so just a note on the review. The breakouts are set up to be self-join. So everyone except for the reviewers, y'all are assigned, no choices for you. But everyone else can opt into whichever room they would like. So just a heads up that you probably won't get immediately pushed in.
Well, actually, let's answer one more question, and let me go back to chat for a second and see if we can do a little bit of configuration. Hold on one. Answer one more question, and we'll be back shortly.
All right, excellent. One more question. Let us see. All right, this question is from Yoshi. Should the portfolio include only UX design projects, or okay to include graphic/web projects when trying to transition to UX/product from the marketing side?
I'll just chime in and say, I want to know as much about you and what you do as possible. I want to see as much about you in your portfolio as I can, but I want it to be clearly grouped and organized and labeled so that I have a clear sense of what it is. If you're showing some really high gloss stuff that's beautifully designed, like aesthetic design, I don't want to not know if you designed it or if you did the IA for that. So just be very clear, because if you're presenting things of very different levels of fidelity and very different levels of sort of aesthetic quality, I want to know what exactly and specifically you did there so that I don't make assumptions that are wrong about where your strengths lie.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Include everything. You do photography, include photography. You play tennis, include tennis related stuff. You like Star Wars, include Star Wars related stuff. Yeah, it never hurts, because exactly like Jeff said, the more we know about you, like the more connection we have with you, and then more of interest. Like I always try to connect with candidates, like try to figure out what similarities we have, what differences we have. Like part of my interview process is I always ask at the end, what do you do for fun? Because I actually want to know what is it you do for fun. So yeah, just include everything, give personality.
Great.
Oh, sorry. One quick one. And like it was mentioned earlier, you might have already been doing UX in your marketing project, doing the website design. Designing website, there's UX in it, just because you weren't doing UX in its name. So what you include might actually already showcase the UX skills.
Excellent. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question? Anyone see it from a different perspective, where they just want to see UX information and everything else is potentially irrelevant? All right. I think we're good now. And
Yep, sorry, I'm back. I made a slight mistake in that I didn't say, sorry to give Jordan a heart attack. Reviewers and people who have submitted portfolios, you are assigned so that there's an even distribution. Everyone else, you can wander where you want. I'm sorry.
perfect.
Okay, so what should happen now when we flip the switch And again, thank you everybody for bearing with us in this highly experimental first take on doing this online. When we flip the switch, the people who are assigned to breakout rooms should go to them. There'll be 3 breakout rooms. And then anybody else should be able to join whichever room that they like, and just kind of sit in, and definitely feel free to chat with each other, share feedback. We'll have about an hour for this section. I think there's 1 group of 4 and 2 groups of 3. So I would recommend try to keep it to maybe 15 minutes or so per reviewer or per portfolio. Take breaks as you need them. But what we'll do is we'll close out the breakout rooms at 7:50. Yes, Jeff, absolutely. We'll do a Star Wars helmet battle afterwards. But we'll close out the rooms at 7:50 and then just come back in to wrap up for the evening. We'll be keeping an eye on chat. Let us know if there's any problems or if everything blows up. But otherwise, yeah, look forward to seeing everybody in an hour and have fun.